Today I ended up somewhere out in the Bornholm countryside again. I do not even know the exact name of this area, but that is part of what I enjoy about these kinds of drives. Sometimes I specifically go somewhere famous or well-known, and other times I just follow smaller roads and see where they lead. This route took me through open fields, quiet country roads, and long stretches of nature with almost no traffic at all. Places like this may not appear in travel guides very often, but they still show a very real side of Bornholm. This is the kind of scenery you can suddenly come across when driving around the island without much of a plan. One thing I noticed today was how wide and open the landscape felt in some areas. There were large green fields on both sides of the road, and the roads themselves seemed to continue endlessly into the distance. Some sections almost felt completely isolated, with only the sound of wind and nature around me. At other moments, the road moved closer to small groups of trees and patches of forest. The scenery constantly changed little by little, even though the overall atmosphere stayed quiet and peaceful. That is something I have started noticing more while filming around Bornholm. Even simple roads can feel very different depending on the lighting, the weather, and the surrounding landscape. The sky also looked very interesting today. The clouds covered most of it, but there were still areas where sunlight came through and brightened parts of the fields and roads ahead. Sometimes the countryside looked almost gray and muted, and then only a minute later everything became much brighter again. I think places like this are easy to overlook because they are not dramatic or crowded with attractions. There are no castles here, no harbors full of boats, and no large tourist areas. It is simply countryside roads, farmland, trees, and open space. But that simplicity is exactly why I wanted to film it. Driving through areas like this can feel very relaxing because there is no rush at all. The roads are quiet, the scenery changes slowly, and there is time to notice small details around you. Sometimes I passed fields stretching far into the distance, while other sections became narrower with trees closer to the road. I also like how different Bornholm feels once you leave the towns behind. The island becomes much quieter very quickly. Even though Bornholm is not very large, there are still many roads and areas that feel far away from everything else. At one point during this drive, I could see open farmland almost everywhere around me, with only small lines of trees breaking up the landscape. Then the road curved again and led toward greener areas with taller vegetation closer to the roadside. The route never became repetitive because the scenery kept changing little by little the entire time. There is also something very peaceful about long roads disappearing into the distance. I always find those moments relaxing to film because they give a sense of movement and exploration, even when the location itself is very simple. Some people may prefer videos filled with famous landmarks or busy places, but I also enjoy showing the quieter parts of Bornholm. These smaller roads and countryside areas are still part of the island, and they help show what everyday Bornholm can look like outside the tourist locations. Another thing I enjoy about filming these routes is that there are very few distractions. It becomes mostly about the landscape itself. The fields, the trees, the road ahead, the changing sky, and the overall atmosphere become the focus instead. Today also felt very calm weather-wise. There was not much movement around except for the wind in the grass and trees. In some places the fields looked almost completely still, while the clouds above slowly moved across the sky. The countryside roads here are also very narrow compared to larger roads in many other countries. Some of them almost feel like paths through nature rather than normal roads. That gives these drives a different feeling compared to filming inside towns or near larger roads. As I kept going further along this route, it reminded me again how varied Bornholm actually is. Within a relatively short distance, you can go from rocky coastlines and harbors to forests, lakes, farmland, and completely open countryside like this. I also think these quieter videos can be relaxing to watch because there is not too much happening all at once. Sometimes it is nice to simply follow a road through nature and look at the scenery passing by without any rush or noise from busy places. Even though I do not know exactly where this road was, I still wanted to record it because I liked the atmosphere around it. Sometimes the unnamed places become just as memorable as the famous ones. So today's video is another drive through the Bornholm countryside, with open fields, quiet roads, changing skies, and the peaceful feeling that comes from simply exploring the island one road at a time. I hope you enjoy coming along for the drive. While I was driving through the countryside today, I suddenly came across these horses standing out in the fields, so I decided to stop for a while and just watch them. I also spent some time filming them, because the whole area felt very quiet and peaceful. At first they barely seemed to notice me at all. They were mostly focused on grazing and slowly moving around the field. One of them looked more curious than the others and kept glancing in my direction from time to time, while the others stayed completely relaxed. The scenery around them also made the moment feel very calm. There were open green fields stretching far into the distance, trees surrounding parts of the area, and almost no noise except for the wind and the occasional movement from the horses themselves. I always think horses fit very naturally into the Bornholm countryside. Seeing them standing quietly in large open fields somehow matches the slower atmosphere that many places on the island have, especially once you move away from the towns and tourist areas. The longer I stood there watching them, the more peaceful the entire place started to feel. None of the horses seemed stressed or in a hurry. They just moved slowly around the field, grazing, looking around, and enjoying the quiet surroundings. One thing I noticed was how different each horse behaved. Some stayed focused entirely on eating, while another seemed much more aware of what was happening nearby. It almost looked like it was keeping an eye on me, while still pretending not to care too much. The weather also added a lot to the atmosphere today. The sunlight coming through the clouds gave the fields and trees a very bright spring feeling, and the green colors around the countryside looked especially strong. I also liked the old farm buildings nearby. They gave the area a very traditional countryside appearance, especially together with the horses and open landscape around them. It felt like one of those quiet places where time moves a little slower. Moments like this are one reason I enjoy exploring Bornholm without always having a specific destination in mind. Sometimes you unexpectedly come across peaceful little scenes like this that are worth stopping for, even if they are very simple. I stayed there for a while, just observing the horses and listening to the quiet surroundings before continuing my drive through the countryside. So this small part of the video became less about the road itself and more about slowing down for a moment and enjoying the peaceful atmosphere out here in the Bornholm countryside. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more places around beautiful Bornholm, please give the video a thumbs up and consider subscribing. There is still a lot more to explore, from quiet forests and beaches to small towns, harbors, restaurants, and hidden places all around the island.